Hello, welcome to the Sound of Science, the place where we deconstruct unscientific bogus and silly scams. Let's go get them. Hello, my fellow critical thinkers. As always, thanks for watching. Recently I found this new and very small channel on YouTube called 4T Christian Apologetics. It features a relatively young guy, I think he's in his 30s, who gives it a try in Christian apologetics. I guess he sees all these Christian charlatan gurus making a lot of money by talking nonsense, and perhaps he thinks, maybe I can do that as well. Of course, I can't look into his mind. I'm not sure what his motivation is, but basically he repeats all the rubbish from clowns like Frank Turek, William Lane Craig and the lot. Nonetheless, it's interesting to review the videos of a new guy on the block, like 4T. So, let's do this.
What's up, guys? Welcome to today's True Dat Daily Apologetic Thought. We are on the job. We're going to do a quickie. I'm actually reading a book by Dr. Frank Turek and Dr. Norman Geisler.
Well, there you go. You made your first mistake. Reading a book by Frank Turek. That man is a total fool. Earlier, he said that he thinks that a bottle of water is an atheist. That is just one of his many nonsense ideas. Many atheists, including myself, have debunked the crap out of Frank Turek over and over again. Perhaps you should first go watch some videos made by his critics.
I'm actually reading a book by Dr. Frank Turek and Dr. Norman Geisler called I Do Not Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist.
Shouldn't that title alone be a warning to you? Having faith to be an atheist, someone who says something like that clearly does not understand what atheism is, or is blatantly misrepresenting atheism. Atheism does not believe anything. It's the lack of believing something. Atheists do not believe the claim that a God exists. Most of us take this position simply because of the lack of sufficient evidence to prove the existence of a God. Just like most people wouldn't believe the claim that unicorns, leprechauns or vampires exist simply because there's no sufficient evidence that they exist. With gods, it's exactly the same. So atheism doesn't claim anything, it doesn't believe anything, it doesn't say anything is true or untrue. Therefore, it doesn't need any faith to believe anything. I think Turek knows all of this, but decides to make a book that misrepresents atheism anyway. The fact that you seem to think that Turek is a respected author of sorts is not a good start, and it damages your credibility from the first minute of your video.
It's a pretty long book, I would say, and it gives a full argument for the evidence of God, and specifically the God of the Bible.
Well, the full evidence for the existence of the Christian God is none. That evidence is not there. So Turek cannot present that evidence. All he can do is serve you some word soup, pretending it is evidence. And if you're gullible enough, which I'm afraid is the case, you will believe him.
They talk also about pantheism and atheism and other, religions and sects that there are out there, sects that are out there.
And now you follow up Frank Turek by making a grave misrepresentation of atheism yourself. As I just explained, and as any dictionary will teach you, atheism is not a religion. Atheism also is not a sect, contrary to many Christian denominations that have many obvious signs of sects, like a very strict power and authority structure, punishment for those who leave the sect or wish to do so, indoctrination starting at a young age, abuse of vulnerable people like young women and children, and mandatory rituals often performed by older men who are wearing clothing that provides large openings that give access to lower body parts. So if you want to talk about sects, then perhaps start with Christianity.
And kind of just, he calls it a 95% airtight argument for Christianity, right? Obviously that's an arbitrary number, that's his opinion, but he recognizes, well, both of them recognize that we can't prove Christianity. right? Because there is a notion of faith. We're not supposed to be able to, okay? Because then it wouldn't be faith that saves us, right?
Well, that's interesting. If you yourself say that the claims of Christianity cannot be proven, then how do you know for sure that not being able to prove Christianity was one of the objectives of your God? That would be just your guess then, wouldn't it? Because if you can't prove the existence of your God, you surely cannot prove his supposed objectives, right? It's like me saying, well, of course I cannot prove the existence of Dracula, but the fact that I can't prove his existence was his entire plan. So the fact that I can't prove that Dracula exists proves that Dracula exists. See how stupid your argument sounds?
So we could prove it in our hearts, but you can't necessarily prove Christianity intellectually.
We can prove Christianity in our hearts. That, of course, doesn't mean anything. You prove nothing in your heart. Your heart is an organ that pumps blood through your body. That is what it does. Your heart is not into the business of proving things. And if you do want to stick to the proving in your heart argument, then please accept my claim that we can prove in our heart that Dracula exists. Again, see how utterly stupid your argument sounds.
Just like atheism can't be proven intellectually, just like...
Well, again, you demonstrate that you don't know what atheism is. Atheism does not make any claim, so it cannot be proven to be true or untrue. If you want to prove something true or untrue, you first need a claim to confirm or refute. And since atheism doesn't make any claim, proving it true or untrue does not apply. It's like trying to prove that not playing chess is true or untrue.
What it comes to in some conversations is there are some people who legitimately want to talk about the topic of human origin, purpose, destination, all those things they want to talk about on an intellectual level, and actually you want to talk philosophy. They're very truly open-minded people who do that, and we could agree to disagree with. I have a lot of friends like that. I'm grateful for them.
Ah, so you consider yourself to be the kind of man who's open-minded and who has the capacity of talking about philosophy on an intellectual level. But everything you've said so far doesn't demonstrate that. You read books from charlatans. You don't understand what atheism is. You babble nonsense like proving something in your heart. So you quickly need to come up with some kind of clever thought to turn the tables here. Otherwise, off you go to the Hall of Shame of failed budget apologists.
There is a question, though, when you get into more of a heated conversation, or even if it's online, someone's sitting behind their computer spewing all their bold words that they would never say to your face, but...
Well, you're not talking to anyone's face, aren't you? You're just talking to your camera right now. But anyway, you think you got some smart question. My patience is wearing thin, but I'm still listening.
There's a place to go that Frank Turek uses, and it's when you arrive at the point, and it's a way of finding out if their argument is actually intellectual or just purely emotional.
Oh yeah, a purely emotional argument. You mean like having faith? That's purely emotional, not intellectual. Faith is believing something without having any evidence to support your belief. Well, that's kind of the pinnacle of emotional reasoning. But I guess you were not referring to that.
So, that question is, and Frank Turek I've seen do this, he'll talk to a lot of students. He'll say, at some point he'll realize where the conversation's going. He'll realize that there's a volatility in the atheist argument, that there's an anger towards Christianity, clear emotional response towards Christianity. And he'll say, let me ask you a question. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian?
Oh, that's an easy question. No. Of course, no. If Christianity were true, of course, I would not become a Christian. And I don't care if you call my answer emotional or intellectual. I wonder if you even know the difference. But I'll explain in great detail why my answer is no. You see, Christianity being true also means that the Bible is true. And in the Bible, the God character chooses to slowly and deliberately drown almost the entire world population, including babies and children, because he was angry at some of their parents. Anyone who bothers can read it for themselves in the Genesis chapter. I do not approve of that kind of behavior. I'm not in favor of God murdering millions of innocent people just because he's angry at some of them. I think that is bad. A God who makes that choice does not get my vote. Furthermore, the God character supposedly is almighty. He's all-powerful. Don't take my words for it, just ask a bunch of Christians. Yet this God character doesn't use his power to end war, crime, violence, and suffering. That's not an emotional argument, it's just facts. We can all see that this misery exists in the world. So this God character can stop suffering, according to Christians, but somehow he thinks it's a good idea to let all that suffering continue for thousands of years. Again, I do not approve of that kind of behavior. I think it's bad. A God who makes that choice does not get my vote. An almighty God could have easily created a world without suffering, yet he wants to test us for some reason rather than take away our suffering. Again, I don't approve of that. A God who makes that kind of choices does not get my vote. And the God character supposedly created a place with the specific objective of forever torturing those who do not obey him. Don't ask me, just ask a bunch of Christians. It's not an emotional argument, it's just an observation of what many Christians believe. If this God character were to exist and he can create anything he wants, and he uses that choice to create a place that has the sole purpose of burning people forever, then of course I would not approve of that kind of behavior. Making people burn forever is bad. A God who shows that kind of behavior does not get my vote. So, if Christianity was proven to be true, then of course I would not become a Christian. Why would I want to worship a God who murders and tortures millions of innocent people and who chooses to let millions of people suffer for thousands of years while he can easily end all that suffering? That kind of God character sounds pretty evil, and I don't wish to worship an evil God. You call that an emotional argument? I don't care. It's a very good emotional argument. So, no. Of course not. If Christianity were to be true, of course I would not become a Christian. That was a very, very easy question. But if you keep whining about my answer, saying it's emotional and therefore you should walk away from me, then perhaps also consider to walk away from your own God, because that dude is emotional all the time. The Bible shows he's angry repeatedly, and when he's angry, he drowns 1 million babies and children. If that's not emotional, then what is?
Really think about that.
Well, I did. I thought about that many times and very long. I read the Bible multiple times, and it shows a very violent God character that I would not support and not worship and not recognize as any kind of authority. And I think anyone with a clear and ethical mind should come to the same conclusion.
Because I've seen people in these videos say, no.
Yeah, that's me and millions of others. We would say no, and I clearly explained why. What's the problem?
So if Christianity were true and Jesus is the Son of God and heaven and hell exist, all of it, all of Christianity, all of the Bible, the Word.
Yes, exactly. You now even specifically mention one of the reasons why I would reject your God. He created hell with the purpose of burning me forever. So of course I would not accept the authority of a tyrant like that. That's obvious.
If it were true, there are still people who would say, no, I won't believe even if it's true.
No, wait, what? Now you changed the words, and therefore the question is totally different. The question was, if Christianity were proven to be true, would you become a Christian? That was your question. Your question was not, would you then believe that this God character exists? That's a totally different question, and by twisting your own words like this, you sound very dishonest or very careless. It's a totally different question, but I will answer it anyway. Of course, it's a much less interesting question. If your God was proven to exist, then yes, of course I would believe he exists. Just like if Odin is proven to exist, you would believe Odin exists, wouldn't you? Because you're an open-minded man who wants to talk about philosophy on an intellectual level, right? So what is proven to exist, you and I would both believe to exist. That's the whole point of proving something. But if Odin is proven to exist, would you then become an Odinist? Would you now worship Odin and his son Thor? Would you hang little hammers over your doors? Would you now go chanting during rain showers to thank Thor for making the land fertile? Would you praise Odin for killing the ice giants? Would you find it reasonable that if you choose not to worship Odin, that he will send you to the underworld, where you'll have to submit to Loki? Would you accept all of that? Would you become an Odinist? There's a big difference between believing a God exists and believing that what a God does is worthy of any worship. Wouldn't you agree? Or are you going to submit to any God who is the first one proven to be true? I wonder.
You have now lost this person to pure emotion because they are no longer intellectual.
No, the one not being intellectual is you. You don't even know how to phrase a proper question. It's either that or you changed the question on purpose, and that would be very dishonest. So again, if your God were proven to be true, then of course I suppose anyone would believe he exists. But not all of us would become members of his fan club, just like you don't become a member of the fan club of any other God that you don't like.
The best way, guys, is to ask that question when necessary, and I'm going to start doing it more.
But guys, listen to me. If you do ask that question, then ask the honest version of the question, which is, if God were proven to exist, would you then believe God exists? That is the honest version of the question. Better not use the version of this junior budget apologist, because if you listen to his advice, you'll get an answer that you're not prepared for. So ironic that Mr. Apologist aimed to expose dishonest atheists, but all he does is exposing his own dishonesty.
And if the person says, no, I wouldn't be a Christian even if I knew it were true, end your conversation and walk away. You're no longer dealing with an intellectual person. You're dealing with pure emotion.
Sure, ask a totally flawed or even dishonest question, and if they don't give you the answer that they're supposed to give, then walk away. What a completely useless advice. I can see you learned a lot from Frank Turek's mode of operation.
We'll go by the leading of your spirit with the right things to talk about and say, but there's no reason we need to get into big fights with people over this. And if it's getting to that point, then it's time to cut it off.
Well, if you don't want to get into fights with people, then perhaps don't try to scam them with dishonest questions. Yes, I tried to listen to this new kid on the block, a new Christian apologist on YouTube. Of course, I always hope that they got something new to offer, but so far, this guy only repeats the rubbish from guys like Turek, and it feels like this dude makes it even worse, if that was even possible. Jeez. I think you should walk away from this guy and instead subscribe to my channel. And if you don't, there will be no consequences. I will not drown your entire village. I will not tell you how to beat up your slaves. And I will not send you some silly talking snake. So I'm much nicer than the Christian God. I give you real free will. You can subscribe or not subscribe without me forcing you into any choice. I'm fine with you being an A-subscribist, if that means anything, but I love you, and just pick whatever fruit you want to eat, for crying out loud.